Amenhotep Neferim Kemet. Welcome and great peace to Egypt. I am Menkheper-ra-seneb, the high priest of Amun, and the superintendent of the gold and silver treasuries, and chief of the Overseers of Craftsmen. I served at the time of Thutmose III and Amenhotep II, circa the mid-15th century before your common era. I have crossed the time barrier to tell you all about metalworks and smiths in our country. In the prehistoric era, our ancestors were using stone instruments and flint tools like all other communities in the same period. However, we started to use copper in the pre-dynastic period, which preceded our dynastic or historical era. The most famous metals we use are copper, bronze, iron, and gold. The latter will be tackled in another episode. The use of copper started to show up at the end of the 5th millennium before your common era. The pre-dynastic cultures of Al-Badari and Thutmose show examples of this usage. They made pins, beads, and other simple objects out of this metal. We knew beaten copper to make royal statues and statues of gods. Copper overlays are used to decorate temples. Since the Old and Middle Kingdoms, weapons were made of copper and bronze. Other tools used in agriculture, medicine, building, and other purposes are made as well from copper. The main mines of copper are located in Serabit el-Khatam and Meghera in Sinai, in the Eastern Desert. We have maps that explain the roads leading to these mines. We know how to mix copper with tin to produce bronze, which is harder than copper. Some poets and sages underestimate the status of the craftsmen and metal workers. They consider them in their writings poor creatures who lead inglorious existence, half pitiable and half ridiculous. However, this idea is not entirely correct. In fact, the work of metal workers and woodcarvers show that these industries reached a very high standard in our country, compared to the intellectual works of the learned class and scribes. Their fine works are witnesses to their high skill and perfection. As a rule, fathers and brothers carried on the same craft. Their art is transmitted traditionally from father to son. We call copper, wea, and bronze, hesmen. The malachite is one of the copper materials that's used extensively in our country. It's used for making coal for the eyes, giving shadows of green and blue colors. We get copper out of the raw materials by smelting. Inscriptions that date back to different periods are spread in the area of Serabit el-Khatam in Sinai. These inscriptions explain the presence of mining expeditions sent to that area. One of the most important mining activities in Sinai is attributed to Amenhotep of the Middle Kingdom. He ruled for at least 45 years, in the 19th and 18th centuries before your common era. Turquoise and copper are abundantly found in Sinai. The prospectors are called SEMENTIW, who were mainly commissioned to search for gemstones, minerals, and precious metals. The SEMENTIW could speak foreign languages to facilitate the economic transaction in Byblos, Punt, the roots of 2 deserts, and Nubia to bring the exotic products. Moreover, the persons who held the title SEMENTIW had a high-rank position in ancient Egyptian society. Now I'll explain to you the raw materials that contain copper according to your own understanding. The most important of these are malachite, it's copper carbonate of green color. Azurite, it's another copper carbonate derivative of blue color. Chrysocolla, it's copper silicate and of blue or bluish-green color. Copper is obtained from the superficial layers by using flint tools. But later, we started to use copper adzes to allow the raw material veins in the deep layers of the mines. 5 or 6 men are seated around a curious object which may be a small clay furnace. The blowing is merely to fan the glow of the furnace. They are blowing through tubes, which are provided with a point in front. The workmen are smelting the metal. They are sitting before the fire, blowing through tubes into the flame. Another way is done by using bellows. These consist of 2 bags, apparently of leather, in each of which tube is fastened. A workman stands with 1 foot on each bag. If he presses the left one down, he raises the right leg at the same time, and draws up the right-hand bellows with a string. 2 pairs of these bellows are being used for an open coal fire, and the glow they produce is so strong that the workmen are obliged to use long wire rods in order to take off the little crucible. The methods of metalworking, the melting, forging, soldering, and chasing of metal are rarely represented. We know how to add tin to copper to make bronze tools and objects. Bronze is harder than copper, of course. It is employed for large vessels as well as for tools, weapons, and statues. The Middle Kingdom is considered the beginning of the Bronze Age in Egypt. It became commonly used since the 18th dynasty. There is a method called the lost wax casting, which you call serre perdue. It is a method of metal casting in which a molten metal is poured into a mold that has been created by means of a wax model. Once the model is made, the wax model is melted and drained away. Raw iron materials are plentiful in Egypt. One of these is hematite. That was known since the pre-dynastic era for making beads, amulets, and small jewelry. Other iron components such as red and yellow ochres are used for making colorful paints. An example of the iron artifacts is the dagger of King Tutankhamun. We brought blacksmiths from Asia to teach us how to make iron tools, weapons, and other objects. They are very clever in this craft. We were also importing iron tools and objects from the Asiatic countries. But since the late period, the use of iron spread out and we manufactured many tools out of it. The frequent mention of workers in metal give us a true conception of the importance of this industry than the few representations that exist in our tombs. The beauty and perfection of the metalworks denote the highest esteem these artisans had enjoyed, contrary to the boasting tone and some sayings of our poets and sages, as they said these words to elevate the status of the scribes more than any other job or profession. So, that is all about these most important metals. Nevertheless, gold and silver will be tackled in another episode. So long.
Make sure to tune into my next videos. If you have any thoughts or questions, add them to your comments. Kindly press the like, share, and subscribe buttons. I'm Farag Sharabasi, and see you in the next episodes. Thank you.